I started this video, and you'll hear within the first second that you can even see his face. He doesn't want to talk about this, right? Because he knows, again, there are people who entire lives just revolve around the internet, and if they see things that they don't like on the internet, they spurg out, they go clickety clack on the keyboard, they go after people, they go after their livelihoods, go after, their jobs and everything, specifically because they have a disagreement, right? And these people in real life, I cannot hang out with these types of people where they come across one thing they disagree with and they spurg the fuck out. Like, I can hang out, like, I've worked with people who's been in prison. I've worked with people who, fuck, I think one even almost committed, like, committed murder. I can work with people from all walks of life. I can hang out and deal with people from all walks of life, but I cannot deal with people that are like that. The type of person that will act friendly, act cool, they'll act all, unprovoking until you say one thing they don't like, and now their entire existence just revolves around tearing you down. Like, no one cares to hang out with those types of people, right? And usually society should correct those actions, but again, as we see, is these actions are now being championed because the same people that believe in this ideology, like, there's no like scripture about being a decent human fucking being, right? Like, say what you want about Christians, right? Like, they absolutely are like, be a decent fucking human being, at least attempt. But with the people of this, the ideology that defends this is like, no. But God forbid you're a racist, and apparently there's no tier of racist. If you're a racist, it just means, oh, we just do not consider you a human, and it's a term that just doesn't mean what it used to mean anymore, right? And that's the type of people that will defend these things, and they'll probably go after him. But 5 years ago, you could get away with going after people who goes against these ideological idiots on Twitter. Nowadays, if he's talking about this, you can't get away with just spurting the fuck out. So yeah, within a second, let's just give us a watch. Am I recording? I am recording. Let's just give us a watch.
Oh boy, I guess we're doing this.
Yep.
I've tried to do my best to navigate the waters of social sensitivity, but there is so much intellectual dishonesty on both sides of the aisle that very little progress is ever made, and oftentimes genuine criticism is lost in translation.
Yeah.
DEI.
Yeah, that's that's part of the tactic, right? If you disagree, even on things completely outside of the spectrum, they still consider you racist, sexist, transphobic, even if you disagree with things that have absolutely nothing to do with that spectrum of argument, right? Because the product, because the company assumes these ideologies as shield, the same type of people will still go after you.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion has very much become the boogeyman that is haunting the video game industry, slowly eroding our trust and interest in a lot of games. And it's penetrated discussions around the quality of games, character designs, narratives, heck, even how we play games in the first place.
Yeah, because these types of individuals, they don't care about games. Like, DEI wants to impose on the consumer, even if the consumer doesn't want it. Like, it's anti-consumer, not entirely by nature, but how it's being implemented, right? By people who don't play games, they don't care about games, they don't care about you, the consumer, though they demand you put food on their fucking table. They'll shove a $70, $100 something $200 shit down your throat, and if you say, what the fuck is this goofy shit, they attack you, right? These are the type of individuals that have infested the gaming industry, gaming companies, gaming corporations, that are now morally imposing on you, the person who plays the fucking game, who puts food on the fucking table of these developers and of the people at the top of the company that gets paid regardless, right? Who wants to suck up ESG money at my expense.
And these are all valid criticisms to make because at the end of the day, we're buying a video game, not a social manifesto.
Yeah.
I want more people to feel like they belong because they do belong. From my perspective, regardless of your nationality, gender, or identity, you're a gamer in my eyes. This isn't about not wanting people in games. This is about being sick and tired of watching companies commoditize people's identities and then go and use them as a shield for bad products. I'm sick of it. While social responsibility and representation is important, at the end of the day, the transaction that's happening is for engagement, entertainment, and enjoyment, and that's being lost.
Yeah, it's being lost by people who don't care about any of those things. They do not care about your consumer interaction with the game, with the product, with the art, right? These are leeches. They leech on the things that are popular, which is why you don't get any new popular IPs. You get yet another Call of Duty, you get yet another Assassin's Creed, the 12th in the fucking series. You get games that are shoved out to suck up ESG money, and they're effectively 10-hour rants of someone who was bullied in school, could never fucking gain a fucking spine. They sit up all night thinking about the fucking comebacks they would have said in the past when they were getting bullied at school, but now they're in these positions of power, and now they have the means to morally lecture on the consumer, add things that and impose things on the consumer that are anti-consumer, anti-gamer, right? And they have the gall to attack you for not buying the fucking game. These are the people we're dealing with. This is the situation we're dealing with.
What I want to do is I want to talk about the real impacts of DEI in gaming. What it is, what it's doing, and where it's going. Video games have always been a controversial medium, partly because they cater to such a wide variety of audiences. Historically, games have been made for children, teens, and adults, which naturally invites conflict and criticism. You have games.
No, but they were a niche, right? Again, when my mother grew up, games were for children, right? And yeah, other people played, but it wasn't popular. And this is because, again, American culture had football, so American culture has sort of a overarching entertainment, and games just weren't part of it. But games are part of American culture because games are what spread American culture throughout the rest of the world. Well, games, movies, TVs, entertainment as a whole, but games being one of them, right? This is an American invention, right? And again, I have pride in that as a gamer, as an American, even though it's being perfected by other countries, because again, as we see, because gaming got popular, you got corporate leeches, people that just want to mass produce the product and live off dividends. You have ideological leeches, like before the DEI, it was the evangelicals that reached into games, right, and changed how games were meant to be. But then when that all fucking fell off, and in entertainment as a whole, when that all fell off, you got good entertainment. Now we're going back into having worse entertainment because of consultants of DEI, of ESG, right? And they say, no, this is absolutely something we want to do. Like, we want, the sweet baby CEOs, like, no, we want to destroy the gaming industry, you know? And they want to add things that they know the gamer, they know people, one, the gamer don't care about, two, makes the game worse, but they want to implement it either way.
Games for all kinds of people, regardless of age, race, gender, or identity, all with different interests, preferences, and expectations. This creates a wide range of opinions and voices about what games should be and what they represent, and oftentimes those opinions clash. Games are also divided by genre, making the industry even more fragmented. You got players that love action games, role-playing games, sports simulations, or fighting games. All of these different types of players that are coming to the table with different needs and desires. And when games tackle...
Yeah, and again, that's the type of thing they want to get away from. Like, again, they say, no, stop treating games like genres. Games should have a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and just shoved in a cauldron and just poured on the fucking consumer. But again, this isn't the mindset of gamers.
Touchy subjects like violence or sexuality, the controversy only grows. Take, for example, Grand Theft Auto with its portrayal of crime and violence, or the Dead or Alive series with its over-the-top sexualized characters. These games have sparked outrage not just from players, but from outside groups like parents, politicians, and media pundits, many of whom don't even play video games, but still have strong opinions, assuming that all games are made for kids. But
again, why do I, a grown-ass adult, need to care what people outside of gaming have against gaming? Like, why do you as a company need to fucking care? Okay, we have the ESRB, right? And you have parents, enough fucking said. Like, why do the thing I enjoy need to change? Or why do I need to be barred from the entertainment I enjoy because someone who doesn't fucking play games need to act like they care? Because, again, it's mostly ideologies. People who treat fiction like reality. And every goddamn generation had to face these types of fucking people. Right? Why do I need to care?
As the industry has grown, so has its core audience. Many of the people that started playing games as kids are now adults, and they're expecting more mature and complex content. However, as these companies are now seeking to widen their audiences and maximize their profits, they've started to blur the line between who games are made for, which is causing even more friction. Games that were once aimed at a specific group now try to appeal to everyone, and this can result in a mess of conflicting ideas, especially when it comes to the growing influence of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Well, usually you get a product that's for no one, right? We're talking art. We're not talking like a car or like an engine part, right? We're not talking like a computer or like a remote. We're talking, again, art, right? And the people who defend DEI will say art is subjective, but the consultants know objectively what to take away to fit their sensibilities, despite art being subjective, right? Like, we've seen that games that try to appeal to everybody ends up appealing to nobody, because, again, and when games got popular and become global, right, what happened with DEI is now it's just, catering to a small ideological fringe group of Westerners, right? Not even the majority of Westerners, just a small fringe ideological group of them that are loud and obnoxious just for the sake of it being so. And then companies think, no, this is our player base. These are the type of people we need to cater to. It's like, no, right? Because what we see with a Ubisoft is they're getting kicked in the fucking ass. What we're seeing with Firewatch Studios, the maker of Concord, they get absolutely shafted. Like, that entire studio gets shut down. I'm not surprised, right?
In video games. Today, DEI has become a hot topic in gaming. We see it in discussions around the failures of games like Concord and Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, where forced inclusivity and awkward character designs have been called out by fans and critics alike. Now, all eyes are on the upcoming Dragon Age The Veilguard, which many fear could be the next casualty of heavy-handed DEI influence. Fans that worry about the game, like others before it, will fall victim to poorly executed, ham-fisted inclusivity that feels more like a corporate checkbox than a meaningful addition to its story and characters.
Well, and again, it's not just that. It's not just inclusion, right? It's game design, story design, artistic design, right? Everything that gamers care about that make games interactive and good is being muddied down to the lowest common denominator which are games journalists that are just going to play to review it for like, I don't know, an hour or so, then never fucking touch it again. These are what the companies think the consumers are, not people who, one, just games as a hobby. Maybe they're older, have kids and responsibilities. They're like, I want to shut my brain off and just enjoy entertainment, right? Not to the, like, maybe to the, maybe again, two young adolescent male gamers that want to be represented in that way, and that's 100% fine, right? Unless your ideology says otherwise. And again, the problem's your ideology, right? Again, it's not just the inclusion of melanated persons. It's not just the inclusion of vagina holders, right? It's every single aspect of games that made them art. And art should be allowed to offend. And I'm going to go even further, even if that's the intention. Even if the intention is to offend you, right? It should be allowed to exist. And the consumer should decide themselves. The problem is, again, and I'm going to tell you the problem, right? And this is going to be probably long-winded. The problem is DEI was initially inducted to cover companies' asses, right? In the wake of George Floyd. Like, they say, oh, we have DEI. We're covering our asses legally, right? And again, they hire these types of individuals thinking, okay, they can control them like they control any other fucking employee. But then it's the HR lady, and what does the HR lady do? Well, she lets in her friends from the same university, same gender studies, and they, in extension, hire their friends on through connections and ideological nepotism. And what do you get? Well, you got Twitter before it became X, where 80% of the people working there didn't fucking do anything, right? That's what you got. And Elon goes in, fires 80% of them, and again, your user experience didn't exactly change as much, right? And that's just one company. Now, this is happening throughout entertainment. People who just do not care what the consumer wants, they have daddy issues and want to impose them and demand you pay them for it. Like, these are the type of individuals that the companies hire and the type of people that they think is their consumer base. And that's just incorrect.
It feels like a lot of these discussions peaked around 2020, which makes a lot of sense. The video game industry has grown exponentially over the years, overtaking movies, music, and television. And with that came private equity. Most publicly traded companies saw their share prices double during the pandemic, and with that came more investors and fiduciary responsibility. These companies are now expected to grow, not just in projects, but in employees, sales, and audiences. Whereas earlier in this industry's life, they could be casual, jeans at work, gamers making games for gamers. Now the industry leaders need to tighten their tie and show they are worth their money. This brings us to
earlier is just, again, motherfuckers in their mom's basement that just wanted to make a game. They were the nerds, putting out entertainment for other nerds, but now that's just not what games are anymore. And because of that, games overall has become worse, right? Okay, maybe a game is good, but it's like, okay, games take years to make, like 6, 7, 8 years, and this is the AAA companies, right? 6, 7, 8 years to make, hundreds of millions of dollars to make. They demand 70, 100, 200 fucking dollars from you. They have microtransactions, so in-game monetization stores. They have season passes. They have crafting. Like, every single online AAA game is just the same, right? This is why people are moving away to smaller indie game projects from China, South Korea, Japan. Like, people are moving away from AAA gaming. And yeah, you might have a couple people that are just normies and play games, and that's what the fuck ever. But again, I said this in my last video. Again, my win condition is to just never play a single BioWare game at all until they decide to do better or they eventually fail. Right now, I can say that insert any AAA gaming company where BioWare is like that's my win condition. And the problem is, a lot of people are following my win condition because it works. It is happening as we speak.
The idea of corporate social responsibility, or CSR, and how DEI fits into that. See, what a lot of people don't talk about is that CSR is the concept that many companies should do more than just chase profits. It's part of their social image to their stakeholders. They're expected to contribute to the greater good by being ethical, environmentally friendly, and socially responsible. DEI is a part of that. On paper, it's about making sure that companies are fair, inclusive, and representative of everyone, and that's not inherently bad. But here's the catch. While CSR and DEI are good in theory, they're often used by corporations to make more money. Governments offer tax breaks, grants, and other financial incentives to companies that follow CSR guidelines, and over time, companies simply just comply to maximize their revenue and avoid fines and potential lawsuits.
Yeah, I mean, they min-max it, right? They treat DEI, CSR, ESG as the game, right? So they will hire, I don't know, an office for like 100 women that, oh, maybe only 1% of them actually do the job. The rest are there to cover their ass, or they're hired on because of friends or ideological nepotism, right? And again, you look at these companies that are doing this, and the majority of their upper management is middle-aged white women. I mean, again, if stereotyping is so wrong, why am I always right? Like you see this in what is it? I think it's Halo Studios now. It's not 343s. You see this in Ubisoft. You know, the people who dare think they understand Japanese culture better than the fucking Japanese, right? Like you see it in these industries, and you don't need a lot of these situations to come to the conclusion, right? And that above game designs, the fact that games like demand more money from you, where before they didn't have to, right? Like how you offset the price of gaming is you sold action figures, you sold shirts, you sold physical tap, but now they can't even do that because there is no faith in these IPs. Like no one's buying the latest trilogy of Star Wars action figures, right? Because they're not fucking selling. So they have to demand more money from you, right? And this is the problem. And they use ideology as a shield to defend bad fucking products, is the problem.
So instead of implementing DEI initiatives out of a genuine desire for inclusivity, many companies are simply doing it just to get those benefits. This leads to a lot of issues in creative industries because this not only affects their approach to hiring and management, but also their games, leading to games that feel hollow with characters, stories, and designs that seem more focused on meeting corporate goals than delivering a valuable experience. Anyone who's watching this video right now that's like me, who's worked at a company at a corporate level, knows how these companies view CSR or DEI. They don't care about it. They feign it to the public, joke about it behind closed doors, and oftentimes only comply because they are absolutely terrified of HR lawsuits since Me Too, or they just don't want to get bent over by environmental agencies like the EPA or workers' safety and OSHA because those fines are millions of dollars. It's all a racket. It's a cold corporate response to heavy-handed regulation. As an example, in the US, we have OSHA, and it has a metric that's called TRIR, Total Recordable Injury Rate. It's a made-up score that levies the amount of injuries that you've had in a year and puts it into a pretty little equation and pops out a number. And if construction contractors even want to bid, I'm not even talking about work, I'm just saying bid on work, for most facilities, they have to be below a certain score. When you have companies that are...
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is just... It's corporate, implementations of an acronym, right? Because the thing itself could be something completely different or used completely different, but I mean the acronym is just that, a set of words or a number or a monetary value, right? So yes, I mean, absolutely.
That are out there that have tens of thousands of employees, accidents are bound to happen. And with such strict rules in place, they often find ways to blame employees, fire injured employees, or hide injuries to be able to protect themselves. Or in most cases, what they do is they lean on consulting companies, a multi-billion-dollar industry of companies that's ran by the self-same people that made the rules in the first place. DEI has its own racket. The DEI consulting industry is valued at $97.2 billion in 2023 and is projected to reach $131.1 billion.
Yeah, and this is because, again, it's they're like, what's the product? Well, the product is to, I guess, secure ESG loans, right? To secure government grants, to cover your ass, to get tax write-offs. Like, that's their product, right? So it absolutely makes sense that companies would do this. But when it comes to the games, the problem is the game suffers, the product suffers, because the product is art, right? Again, it's not like, a car. It's not like anything that can be mass produced. It is art. And if the company, it's entertainment, and if the consumer does not like the art, if the consumer does not like the entertainment, they don't buy it. And if they don't buy, you have a Ubisoft situation happening to other companies.
By 2031. Snake oil salesmen developing new terms and sensitivity training to scare companies into using their services to keep them safe from regulators and lawsuits. We've seen both games media and consultancy agencies say some pretty outrageous things over the last few years. So I want to ask you this. Do you think that these regulators and these consultancy agencies actually want people to get along? Do you think it really is about sensitivity? Because
no.
From my perspective, it looks like division is a very lucrative industry.
Yeah, everybody knows this, and this pisses me off. Everybody knows this, but no one wants to say it. Right? Everybody knows, obviously, if division didn't exist, if these things did not exist, these companies wouldn't be making this money. Like, everybody, children understand this, right? But for some reason, people want it to exist. Like, the ideological individuals on Twitter wants this to exist, right? And maybe the type of individuals benefit from these practices. But again, as a gamer, it is in my interest that consultancy agencies fucking fail, and that the game industry, AAA games, just fail. Because if it gets us back to what games used to be, when they were a niche, right, then we'd get back to having good games, right?
Right now we have a lot of publishers and studios that are making a ton of money, billions of dollars. They're overtaking other industries. That's inviting in a lot of investors. And these companies have to show that they're growing. They got to show that they can make more money in the future. So these companies are triple dipping. They're going in, they're checking boxes for tax advantages. They are bringing in these consultancy agencies to make sure they're above board. And on top of that, they're using these oversafe work practices to try to make sure that they can avoid any lawsuits. They're trying to protect their money as much as they can and grow it as much as they can. But at the end of the day, the products that we're receiving are a product of that workplace. Yeah. Now, this isn't to say that the people that are taking advantages of these programs, specifically like grants and things like that, don't deserve that grant or don't deserve the position that they got as a result of it. I think a lot of people fail to recognize or conveniently forget that you have to have the grades to be able to get through these programs in the first place and to graduate to actually even get the job. And when it comes to actual diversity hiring, I don't think there's probably anybody that's out there that thinks that they were hired or even knows that they were hired because they were there to check a box.
Yeah, and again, because diversity happens naturally, right? As gaming becomes global, as more people get into it, as it becomes more popular, then these are things that happen now. If you try to force these things, then you will have problems, if you try to social engineer and to move and to micromanage people like they're checkers on the board, that's when you get problems. And not only that, it's like you can't even hide the fact that you're doing this anymore. Like if anyone sees DEI, they're just not going to buy the product because they know, okay, the company uses DEI, uses consultancies, agencies, just to suck up ESG. Okay, well, that game is not for me. It doesn't exist for me, the gamer. And in most cases, I'd say 70-80% of the cases that just remain true. Like maybe you have the 20% case where it actually makes a good game, but people want the 80% situation where 80% of the games are good. And if that means passing up the 20% of the good games just so we can get to the 80%, then like so fucking be it. Again, gamers have a catalog of old games that they will gladly jump back into. And now we're even being told to stop playing old games by the game journalists, the very people that defend the reason why you're playing old games, right?
These are suits. These are CEOs that only care about growing profits and their own personal image. They're looking at this like a two-pronged approach. They're doing it to their games and they're doing it to their workplace. They're hiring in people that don't have the merit, they don't have the skill, but they don't really care about that because as long as they're there, well, they can get the tax break. They have the numbers that they need to actually have to either show to regulators or to show to their board of directors or whatever it might be. And then at the same time, they're using the same ideology, these same practices that are being taught to them by consultancy agencies in their video games to try to grow their audience beyond what it is.
Yeah, and again, you know, and they like the ideology that they tout from, you know, the American college or universities, that meritocracy, in fact, is a bad thing. Like they hate meritocracy. They hate having to earn the job. They covet the position. They covet the job. They covet your money. And if you don't give it to them, then you get into lawsuits. And this is the problem, right? And so the corporate suits, which gets paid regardless, they hire these individuals thinking they can control them, but they can't. But they also don't care because they get paid one way or the other. And in most cases, they know the consumer suffers to an extent. But these are people that they look at spreadsheets, they look at how other companies are running, and they look at their money, and they look at, you know, the infinite growth they need. Therefore, they have to make the product for the widest audience. They need ESG money. They need government grants and write-offs. They need to defend their asses from lawsuits, right? You know, and again, all of this comes at the, you know, detriment of the consumer. And that's the problem, is the consumer does not want, like this, the consumer doesn't fucking care, right? And I say this and I'm going to sound callous, brother, I don't fucking care, like the DEI, or if they're trying to, you know, cover their asses from lawsuits, right? What the fuck does that have to do with me? Oh, well, the company will go other. Well, there's other game companies. Again, the incentive should be to put out the best possible product, right? And again, it's not like I want, I don't know, them to exploit child labor. Like, I don't much fucking want them to do that, but at the end of the day, I just want a better product. And game companies used to be able to do this while remaining ethical. And this was back when games were not popular. It was back when games were for children. They could still make a good game for gamers. Now, it's like they can't.
And it's going to impact the quality of your games when you do that for long enough, often enough. And I think one of the reasons why we've seen so much of it recently is because the games that we're getting are coming from that growth initiative. They're coming from the time where the video game industry really boomed. And that's why we're seeing a lot of games that are coming out that just lack quality at the end of the day. I'm not even talking about the ideology or messaging. I'm just talking about just the general quality of games that are delivered, how buggy they are, frame rate issues, all kinds of different problems. When you have companies that are this big, that have this big of issues, well, their problems become apparent pretty quick. Thomas Mahler, studio lead behind Ori and the Blind Forest and their upcoming game No Rest for the Wicked, responded to a comment from Elon Musk that simply said, DEI kills art. Mahler wrote, I've never retweeted anything from Elon before because I'm a game designer, but I very much agree with this statement. The problem with DEI isn't in its principle, but it's in the way it's being implemented. Years before DEI became a thing, we had Quentin Tarantino, a white director, make a movie about a badass black dude who buddied up with a white dude. My point being, just let artists be artists and DEI will happen naturally. Ultimately, a good message has to come from the heart and not from indoctrination.
Yeah, exactly. See, this is what I'm saying. Like, there's so many, and this was a trope, right? Where you had the protagonist white dude, which will seek, and this was in movies and TV shows, where some white dude will seek guidance from a black wise guy, and it's called the magical Negro trope, right? And it was a trope, but again, it was diversity, and it wasn't done to check a box. It was just done, it's just as natural diversity, right? And no one really cared. I mean, it was just there. You had so many other tropes in entertainment, and that was just one of them, right? But nowadays, it's something that is like people. It's something that's gamified by these companies, and at the end of the day, again, the consumer doesn't care if it's a bunch of white dudes or a bunch of black dudes or a bunch of women that make the game, as long as the game's fucking good, right? Like, okay, you have Black Myth Wukong, which are a bunch of Chinese motherfuckers making a good fucking game. You have The First Descendant, which is a bunch of South Korean motherfuckers making a game. Like, do you think people care? No. Because they're good fucking games. The problem is the DEI initiative is not making good games. It's making, and what we see is it's making worse games. It's making worse games than the previous iterations, right? And they don't create anything new. They latch on to IPs that have existed. They add the DEI, they add consultancies, and it just becomes a worse product. And again, even from a technical standpoint also, again, because if you have people who aren't hired off merit or off ideological nepotism, it's just quality will suffer as a base. And again, for some reason, people who don't play games don't care. It's like people who don't play games, right? They aren't gamers. Like, they don't care my interests as a gamer, as a consumer, and as someone who works for a fucking living, right? Just want these initiatives to exist. It boggles my fucking mind. Again, they demand complete fucking strangers that see the fall of quality, of gameplay, of story, right? They see the fall of these things with your own fucking eyes in real time. And again, people who don't play games be like, no, you shut the fuck up, let this happen, or I'll call you, I don't know, a morally charged label. And then they'll just stand there like a fucking NPC. And it's like, what? Bitch, get the fuck out of my face.
And I think this is the heart of the issue, indoctrination, because that's what it feels like. Many people have grown up, like myself, being taught that everyone is human, identities are a feature, character is the person. But over the last few years, it feels like people want to rewrite that, making someone's outward appearance and their lineage the only thing that matters. And if you question it from the perspective of equality, you're chastised by developers, the media, and those who don't care for nuance.
Yeah, because again, they hire in these people from universities that have, are like, say, non-binary, and they do this like with the understanding that, okay, I'm gonna just treat you like a human fucking being, right? But then you realize, no, their identity is their ideology, which is the way they interact with the world, which is the way they're taught to interact by their university professor and by their pipeline of indoctrination. And then they hire people that think like them, act like them, look like them. Like, you know, there's probably some of the most exclusive people you've probably ever seen in your life, right? Because even a genuine racist understands, okay, yeah, people that look like different from me exist, and if they don't fuck with me, I tend not to fuck with them because I have problems of my own, and the last thing I need is more problems, right? Like these individuals, they look for problems, they seek demons erected in their head, and they impose them on everybody else. People that look different, people that think different, people that act different, right? And that's the problem, right?
I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is being pushed by people that lack the care, talent, class, and most importantly, the character to be able to tell diverse stories or represent a variety of people. If employees are demanded to make characters, stories, and games that appeal to specific identities alone, games aren't being made organically. They're coming off a factory press, molded to suit whatever a marketing department's idea of diversity is. Gay characters with half-shaved and colored hair, the token black character with the same haircut from an urban upbringing backed by a hip-hop soundtrack, and the evil white villain. We see it across all forms of media. It's unoriginal, it's tacky, it's offensive, and it's done for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, and again, you cannot hide this anymore. Like at first they could hide it. They can't. They cannot hide this. Even normal fucking people are looking at this and like, okay, no, I will, if I see even a trace of this, I will not buy your game. Oh, hey, is this a CEO? Oh.
Sweet Baby Incorporated, a narrative consulting company that has become infamous for pushing some of the most extreme and heavy-handed DEI initiatives in gaming. The company has made headlines not for their approach to storytelling, but for the lack in quality of games that they've consulted on and the controversial statements from its leaders that show just how little integrity this company has. A figure from Sweet Baby Incorporated went as far to say that marketing teams need to be terrified of the consequences if they don't make their games culturally sensitive, implying that fear and coercion should drive creative decisions rather than genuine artistic expression.
Yeah, that's how they think. They want to be the ideological mafia of inclusion, and they want to, and this comes even at the core, like the ground level, because these individuals are difficult to fucking work with, right? Because they look for people to fire so they can hire in their friends. They look for demons. And if you look for demons, you're going to fucking find them, right? You know, you can't be acting that way towards people. Like, you wouldn't act that way in the streets, right? But because it's a corporate hoity-toity type situation, they believe, yes, we can absolutely act this way towards people and towards the consumer. And that's the problem, right? They act this way towards the fucking consumer, towards people who play games, towards people who put food on their fucking table, right? They act that way towards them. And then they still demand your money. You know, they attack you for not buying Duskborn. They attack you, the gamer, for not buying Concord. You were attacked for not buying into their ideological racketeering business, right?
Perhaps one of the more revealing statements came from one of their leaders giving a presentation saying their ultimate goal was to burn the industry to the ground. These extreme views highlight just how far removed this company is from the art and value that developers bring. Instead of enhancing the creative process or developing authentic, meaningful stories, their approach is rooted in pushing divisive ideologies and using scare tactics to remain relevant as the consulting industry makes billions of dollars a year.
Yeah, and they say so many fucking things that your mother wouldn't use. And again, they say these things. I guess I can acknowledge the grind. Like, this works. right? They say these odd fucking things, and companies fall for them. The problem is, I, as a gamer, this does not work in my interest. This does not help. This does not make gaming an art form. This does not preserve it. This destroys gaming. It destroys entertainment. I, at the end of the day, get a less valuable product because this person exists, which is why I want this person to fail. I don't care their ideology. I don't care the fact that they look like me. I want them to fail because they don't represent me. They don't represent gamers. They say the words you want to hear. They say the words that people want to hear. But at the end of the day, they are the only ones being uplifted. You are not.
Relevant as the consulting industry makes billions of dollars a year. Just look at the way that people are represented in these games and what games they're doing it in, and tell me why people shouldn't get upset. Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, a game aimed at DC comic fans and young men, making journal entries about Wonder Woman and oppressive toxic masculinity, retconning Mr. Freeze into Miss Freeze, creating an abomination in character design, all the while delivering horrible gameplay in an uninspired shooter. These are
if Miss Freeze was hot, no one would care. But they made active design decisions in a game meant for adolescent young men, and they add 50-year-old grannies, unappealing game design. And if you talk about this, they call you a coomer. They use words like ideologically charged words and insults to you. Like, they want to shame you into throwing your 70 or I think 100 and something fucking dollars at them because of whatever the fuck this is supposed to be, right?
are things that customers didn't knowingly sign up for when they purchased the game.
I swear this woman's in like almost every single fucking DC and superhero movie, right?
Many believe that they were buying a game from a beloved studio who developed award-winning titles. That's not what they got. Take Concord, a game that was criticized well before its release for its awkward attempt at forced diversity. The marketing felt contrived, a Marvel knockoff, highlighting character designs that seemed to tick boxes rather than focusing on the game's actual content, which shone through because once the game was released, it was a game that was too busy trying to be safe that it appealed to nobody. A game that came from PlayStation, where players are invested in their platform and have high expectations for high-quality games, only to...
Yeah, people wanted a PlayStation exclusive, right? This is what, again, this used to be the selling point in the console war, or exclusives. Why you would buy a fucking console to begin with. And at the time, you could even justify buying a console over a PC based off the exclusives alone. Like, we bought an Xbox, like, we had a computer, right? But I think we ended up buying an Xbox because of the exclusives. But you get just a bad fucking exclusive. And again, people expect quality in all aspects when it's a game from fucking Sony, a multi-billion-dollar company that made good products in the past. If you've made good products in the past, people expect quality. Might not be as much as you used to do, but it has to be there, right? Concord, I guess it functioned alright, but it was an Overwatch rip-off, but it didn't have any of the appeal Overwatch had. And again, the very people who made this game, again, they did not care to make a product for you, the gamer. They really only cared to make a product just to suck up ESG, suck up government grants, I guess make Sony put in $400 million just to even get it at a barely playable and marketable state, right? And in that case, I guess the game was successful, right? It existed to siphon wealth, siphon money, and it fucking worked. Again, but the problem is it was a bad game. And as a gamer, I'm glad this game failed, and I'm glad the company went under.
find out that this is what PlayStation's leadership thinks of their fans and what their investment is worthy of. A lot of people have dunked on Dustborn, a game that felt more like a caricature of diversity rather than a game aimed at a genuine audience, one that was heavily criticized for how poor of a job it pretended to do representing the people that it was apparently made for. Social criticisms aside, its developer actually admitted in a recent interview that they knew that people don't like their games and they knew that people wouldn't like this game, yet somehow they're astonished by the backlash for how ridiculous the game was. My biggest criticism...
Again, the game wasn't for you. So it's like, okay, 0 out of 10. You know, people don't give arbitrary numbers at games anymore because they don't mean anything. And it's like, if it doesn't mean anything, then it doesn't matter if you do it or not. So it's like, okay, Dustborn 0 out of 10. Why? Because it's not a game for me. This is a game meant for government grants. Game meant to sow division, to do the exact opposite of what entertainment did in the past, which was to unify. It existed to sow discourse amongst people, and they knew people that they would get the backlash, and they still acted again. I guess they were talking to the people who don't play games. Oh, look at all these people giving us bad publicity. It's like, yeah, because it's what you wanted.
Criticism here is the fact that this developer, the studio lead, knew that this game wasn't going to make any money. They knew that it was a game that nobody wanted, and they took millions of dollars in government assistance to make it. Taxpayer dollars that could have gone to a different Norwegian studio to make a game that people actually wanted. We're now seeing developers shoehorn ideologies and diversity into their video games without any regard for context, narrative integrity, or the desires of their audience. They're completely ignoring those things. Take infamous examples like characters being redesigned or elements being removed from remasters or remakes purely to fit modern DEI standards. Lara Croft, Silent Hill 2, whether it's changing character models, gender, or backstory, not to serve the plot, but for a specific agenda. It all results in tokenism, where characters become caricatures of the very identities they're supposed to represent. Instead of...
Yeah, they treat characters like, oh, these are vessels that someone who shares the same genitalia, shares the same melanin count, to inject into the character and not have the character exist in its own ecosystem and fundamentally be its own simulacrum of a human being on the screen, right? They did this with, what's his name, Jax from Mortal Kombat. Like, in the original, well, in the games before the remake, or before, I think it was 15, or the refuck, right? He was all for America. Like, even one of his victory poses was the American flag, and he would wave it like he was a soldier, he was an American, he was a good father. But then they did the remake where, oh, he went back, he made it to where slavery never existed. He made Africa effectively like Wakanda. Like, this disrespects the character, because that's not who he was. That's not his character. This is a writer in a boardroom using this character as like wearing the corpse of this fictional character to effectively rant, to impose what they want in fiction, oppose their ideology. And it disrespects the character, it disrespects Mortal Kombat, it disrespects the players, right? And again, they don't care, you, the consumer. They just care that, oh, they got to impose their morals and values upon you, the person who plays the fucking game.
Nuanced, well-rounded individuals, we get stereotypes, over-the-top, one-dimensional characters that feel more like corporate creations than artistic expressions. It's no wonder that players are frustrated. When we're buying a game, we are entering into an exchange where we are giving our money and expecting a product that was crafted with care, creativity, and respect for the audience, but that respect isn't there anymore. Instead, what we are seeing more and more is the injection of forced messaging, hamstringing the creative process. Games that are starting to feel more like manufactured products made to meet quotas and marketing objectives rather than passion projects that are inviting players into engaging and meaningful worlds. The issue with DEI isn't about the principles themselves, it's about how it's being implemented. Like Thomas Mahler said, DEI will happen naturally if artists are allowed to be artists. The problem arises when corporate interests take over and diversity becomes a commodity to sell rather than a genuine attempt to reflect on the world that we live in. It leads to a disconnect between players and the games, and ultimately between the creators and their audience. And I think that's a fair and valid criticism to make because it's something observable. We can see it happening in the industry today.
Yeah, you see with your own eyes, but then they go after you because they know what's happening. You know what's happening. But they want to, I guess, spurt out at you to shut you the fuck up. Even though they know it's not, it goes against the consumer. You know it goes against you. It insults you as a consumer. You as a fucking insults your intelligence, right? But they just want to shut you the fuck up. And again, people aren't really even mad. People are just not buying these games, right? Or unless you have YouTubers buying the game specifically to shit on the game, right? But it's like, again, at the end of the day, okay, this IP, by Dragon Age, the IP is going to suffer because now no one cares for the IP. And again, they're glad this is happening, right? That's the problem. Like, they are happy that they're destroying beloved IPs, injecting their ideology, injecting themselves into them. It's what happens with Star Wars, with the Acolyte. And again, when these things fail, like the gamers, the consumer is just happy it happens, right?
And while we've had a lot of games that have come out, absolutely incredible games, at the same time, the reason why players are so upset, the reason why this is such a popular talking point is because it's happening within the foundation of the industry. It's happening to the companies that are the very pillars that elevated the industry. The companies that made the games that made us gamers, Activision, EA, Blizzard, Xbox, PlayStation, the list goes on. We get why they're doing it. It's all for money. But the funny thing is that they're losing a lot of it doing what they've been doing. And it's got me thinking, you know, I've noticed over the last couple of years, some of these breakout successes that we've seen have reached incredible heights that I don't think that they would have reached if it wasn't for the fact that the industry is in the state that it's in. They created this situation. They swung the pendulum in one direction and now it's stuck. And because of that, their competition is getting richer by the day. They're getting more fans, they're getting more support, and it's going to make it even more difficult for some of these companies to be able to back out of the position that they're in.
Yeah, it's becoming a selling point to be anti-DEI, anti-consultant. You know, if you're just anti the established gaming culture, people will just buy your product to spite those individuals, right? The individuals who don't care for you as a gamer, don't even care for you as even a human being because they have this ideology they need to profligate, even if it's at your expense or the expense of gaming. And they'll justify it, right? They'll be like, oh, it's just gaming. Oh, it's just this, that, and the other. It's like, okay, well, I identify as non-binary, so I will not buy your products. And then I get attacked. It's like, okay, well, is this what you want? Like, what's your win condition here, right? To suck up money? Well, it's working for now. It's not, well, you're not sucking my fucking cash to buy the games. And, you know, the people who attack me, they don't buy the games. So what's the win condition? Because mine is to just not buy the product, to play other games. That's my win condition. You know, just to sit and herald the fall of Ubisoft, of BioWare, of EA, of these massive corporations, right, that don't put out products I want to play. And not only that, they attack me, they attack my friends, they attack my family, because what, we're gamers, but we don't buy their products, which makes us bad people. Because apparently purchasing a product is like a litmus test on your character. It's not a sentiment that no one really agrees with, but for some reason is being shoved into me, right? Like, if that falls tomorrow, I'd be the happiest man on the fucking planet.
Baldur's Gate 3, Black Myth Wukong, Stellar Blade, Space Marine 2, Helldivers 2, Pal World. There's a huge list of games that we've seen come out over the last couple of years that have been absolute bangers, and there's an ocean of difference with the quality and feel of those games and some of these patronizing attempts at guilting us out of our money. Even more so, games that are putting themselves in a position that we feel guilty for trying to voice our criticisms on. And they really like that last part. Us not wanting to voice our criticisms. Characters, identities, DEI, none of these things were dominant talking points in the gaming industry before because, to be quite frank, nobody cared or noticed. Games were seen as a universal medium where anyone could find something to enjoy. In the past, developers didn't feel the need to loudly proclaim that their game was diverse. It was just a natural part of the storytelling. Characters were designed to fit the narrative or the gameplay, not to check boxes for representation. This allowed games back then to thrive creatively with unique and varied experiences that applied or appealed to different audiences. And I think that's the most important part. Not every game was made for everyone, but there was always something to find for everyone.
Yeah, it's called a niche, right? There's people who liked the horror aspect of the original Silent Hill. There's people that liked the first-person shooting of Call of Duty. You know, people liked Assassin's Creed and its interesting stealth and melee combat system. You know, there are people like the RPG aspect of, like, Morrowind. You know, there are games for anyone. People like the strategy of StarCraft. You know, there are games for specific niches, right? A game existed for everyone, right? Or every gamer. And there's some overlap, but for the most part, games were inclusive in the sense that, you know, anyone could enjoy them, right? And even people from across the world with Warcraft can play with another person on the other side of the world. Like, this is genuine, and this is inclusion that my mother would understand, right? Like, my mother, if I had to explain this to her, she doesn't understand the corporate inclusive mindset that's in companies nowadays that not even they could truly explain, because it would sound dumb and they'd use a bunch of terminology that she wouldn't use, right? Even she understands that. Like, well, she'd be like, what the fuck is this? And it's like, yeah, it sounds Looney Tune trying to explain, because they try to be as nebulous as possible, but it's how it's being implemented. It's being implemented through racketeering, right? It's being implemented through this inclusive mafia of consultants that don't care if the products suffer. They don't care if you, the gamer, has a less product. They only care for ideology. And not even an ideology the majority of Westerners hold. This small, fringe, radical ideology from universities that only a small, fringe, radical group of people really push. Like, everyone's fine with inclusion, right? But the small, fringe, radical ideology weaponizes it and gamify it to where it's Looney Tune.
Players simply just connected with characters, or they ignored the ones that they didn't relate to, and the focus always remained on the game's quality rather than the demographic that they were trying to reach. It's only in recent years that character identities have been pushed to the forefront, making DEI feel constant, this forced presence in every conversation, often distracting from the core of what games are supposed to be: engaging, fun, and worth our money. Now, identity is the only thing people talk about. Now, this may come as a surprise to a lot of people, but genuine racism, bigotry, and hate actually exist. There are studios and developers today that are under a constant barrage of hate from fans and people that will never even play their games. Just recently, I watched a panel that was criticizing comments that were made by the studio head of Tales of Cancerous. This studio ended up announcing their hiatus due to the game's poor performance. A game that ultimately failed because of its deep ties to Sweet Baby Incorporated, that already generated a lot of distrust, and also it was being praised and promoted by the least trustworthy people in games media. The studio's lead, Abubakar Salim, back in May, spoke in a video about how often he's been told that he hasn't earned his position, how he's faced prejudice and attacks, and it actually felt like a genuine heart-to-heart, only for the video to end with him announcing a promotion for the game and it being heavily discounted, evaporating any goodwill that the video was supposed to represent and ultimately making it feel like a marketing scheme. The panel who chose to criticize Salim, made up of a few well-known figures on Twitter, instead of making thoughtful criticisms, only chose to mention things like Rafiki when making fun of the way that he dressed, or saying that he's never met his father when he mentioned his dad passing away, and that the studio should have been called Spear Chucker Studio.
Yeah, I mean, these people exist, right? And again, this was 2007, 2008 banter, right? In 2006, you wouldn't care. You'd be like, okay, these are a bunch of fucking keyboard warriors that if they were to probably meet him on the street, they wouldn't even be able to look this motherfucker in the eyes, right? But because they're behind their keyboards, they're behind their avatars in their screen, they could talk this way. Like, people didn't care about that. But now, for some reason, people do, right? And these criticisms will always exist towards people, right? It's how you interact with these criticisms which defines you. And yeah, I mean, he could have been like, yeah, you know, I did work with Salim. I don't know what he said. I haven't watched the video, right? But usually what you do is just say, yeah, this is the path I went down, and you know, if it's led to a sinking ship, hey, I guess I'll just ride the ship to the bottom of the ocean, and I can respect that, right? You know, bad games used to exist, but at least they had creative intent, even though they were bad. Nowadays, games are bad because they are made bad because of DEI, because of consultancy groups, because of groups and things and ideas that operate outside of gaming as an art form, as entertainment, as an interaction, right? And because these things operate outside this group, outside this layer of entertainment, they introduce things that are also outside the criteria that the layer needs to fit into the gaming perception, right? Now, and that's the problem, is things that have nothing to do with gaming, nothing to do with the consumer interaction, nothing to do with gamers' enjoyment of the product, right? These things are implemented, and it's coming at the detriment of the consumer.
Disgusting, abhorrent, blatant racist behavior that belongs nowhere near and does not represent any of the genuine criticisms that we've had for either Surgeon Studios, Abubakar Salim, or Tales of Cancerous, or the rest of the industry for that matter. I hate it because we exist in this weird place where, because of social media, the most outrageous opinions catch the most eyes, where comments like the ones that I just mentioned become the blanket scapegoat for genuine criticism. We have journalists and developers that are out there talking about how hateful gamers are. We have articles written about how Helldivers 2 was somehow promoting fascism, even though it was a handful of edgelords in a Discord. We have the senior editor of Kotaku on a public showcase telling people that she wants to fight them physically if they don't like the direction of games today. We have Forbes writing articles about Dragon Age the Veilguard, preemptively hand-waving any criticisms for what they call the modernized character creator and gender selection, because if you don't like it, don't use it. Yet women are criticizing the character creator because they don't feel represented by it. And now somehow they're a part of it.
Yeah, because it's fucking ugly, right? Like, you'll be hard-pressed to actually make a good fucking female character, because it is so blatantly bad. And again, I forgot, I'm sorry, it's not female anymore. It's body type B, you know, for the small fringe radical group of people who actually give a shit, right? Because you don't talk like this in reality. Like, I don't call my mother a fucking body type B. What the fuck does that even mean? Oh, but it's what they're told to add because of the consultancies, right? But yeah, and that's the problem with Veilguard to me. Is like, again, I play a female character for a completely different reason, right? Like, I'm gonna be staring at in a third person view of a character while I'm beating the hell out of someone. I want to look at an ass.
The angry, edgy gamer crowd? I think that the worst part of all of this is how often I see individuals or groups being blamed. No, it's the men that are spreading the hate. No, it's the liberal women that are ruining games. No, it's white privilege. No, it's minorities taking under...
No, again, yeah, it's identity. Like, that's why people call it identity politics. It's weaponizing people's identity, weaponizing characteristics that they cannot change, and beating people over the head with it, right? And that's why people universally don't care for this in reality, in real life. It's fucking cringe. It's fucking dumb. But online, again, these ideas that are like these people, they jump into their echo chambers of people who look like them, talk like them, act like them. They self-radicalize. Then they take their group and impose the demons on everybody else. Right? This is what happens. Like, this is the game that's being played.
Deserve jobs. No, it's the straights. No, it's the gays, when in fact all of these issues are just plain old-fashioned corporate greed and corruption. It is consultancy industries that are made and managed by the governments that set the rules. It's large corporations hiring talentless, self-indulgent, bitter people because they need to check a box for tax incentives, using consultancy agencies to supplement their work at a lower rate and then train those self-same talentless employees. Then those employees find their way into leadership roles and narrative positions, taking corporate initiatives for diversity on a ride, using it as their mark to be left on the world, because without identity, their life has no meaning.
Yeah, they don't create, they don't, add to gaming. They only have their identity, and they only have that to weaponize, right? And again, before DEI, it was Christians that act this way, and for them, I mean, any ideology weaponize some sort of facet of humanity against everybody, right? And I guess now it's being done at a corporate level. And that's the problem, right? Because, again, people don't act like this in real life. Like, like a person like this doesn't act that way unless they're surrounded, again, by people that act like them, by people that look like them, by people that think like them. Like, they just don't act that way. But now online, they absolutely can. And again, in 2005, they'd be laughed off the image board for saying some stupid shit. But no, they're now festering, they're self-radicalizing, they ban anyone that disagrees with the ideology, so now they think, oh no, people legitimately think this way, right? Corporations like, no, I guess everyone does. Well, no, it's just that they ban everyone that thinks differently, right?
It's corporations that have cultivated massive audiences, tens of millions of players who don't understand that those players have a limited amount of time and money, less so by the year. And they can't play every single game that's released, but they need to grow their audience. They need more players. They need more money. So they look to trends in other media. And they think, hey, you know what? My ultra masculine franchise about war and loss, you know what that needs? It needs a female lead to take the place of beloved male characters in a story about friendship and rainbows. That'll draw in the new demographics. We'll make posts on social media talking about how inclusive we are. We'll latch ourselves onto social causes, and then we will minimize and remove all of those elements when we go to sell it in a different country that doesn't share those values.
Absolutely.
So what's the impact of DEI on gaming? It's performative inclusivity for corporations and governments who have weaponized it to meet financial goals while ignoring the impact on the product or the audience. It's creating poorly executed games, surface-level attempts at diversity that are nothing more than transparent greed because we know that they don't care. And we see it in broad daylight. It's dividing the people in the gaming community, and it's being co-opted by Twitter engagement farmers and games media, fanning the flames to keep the hatred going. Keep them mad, keep them fighting, because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is that they stay relevant, and it's the only way that they can make money. It's about suppressing genuine criticism. It's about fragmenting communities. It's promoting ill will and bad ideologies on both sides of the aisle, and ultimately, it's making gaming worse.
Yeah, again, it's people using ideology, they're using the corporate landscape and the ideological landscape and political landscape to uplift themselves, and again to work their way up these corporations these way. Like, no, the consumer doesn't benefit. If this is anti-consumer, which is the issue, right?
I think having discussions like these are incredibly important and constructive, and I think that's the most important part, is to have constructive conversations around these kind of issues, because I think more times than not it's much easier to just point at one of these issues and tear it down and never really talk about anything else around it, the deeper meaning, where it comes from, what it's actually doing, what its intentions are, and things like that. And in this case, while I don't think that EA, Activision, Blizzard, Ubisoft, whoever else is going to be watching anything like this, I do think that the smaller studios, or the studios that we've been supporting, the ones that have been out there actually delivering high quality games that are worth our money, that we've been buying, that we've been enjoying, that have seen a ton of success, I do think that they are listening to things like these, because they want to continue that success. And in a lot of ways, I think that they're going to be the changing of the old guard. I think that they're going to be taking the place of many of the companies that we see that are leading the industry today, because after a while, if they can't grow their profits and their games just don't speak to audiences anymore, they're going to be running into some problems.
Yeah, the silver age of gaming is either upon us or it's coming in the next year, right? Small story-driven products and companies, small, multiplayer cooperative products are going to take the place of, overused, milked to death, horse beaten AAA IPs that are now sadly just been destroyed, right? Like, I don't know a single person who's actually interested in Star Wars, right? So there's going to be that sci-fi product that just takes its place, and it's sad, but unfortunately, that's the intention. The intention, I don't know why I'm tracing his fucking hairline. The intention is to destroy popular things, suck them of wealth, suck them of revenue, discard their corpse. And most of the time, these CEOs just ride their ass to another IP where they do the same thing. And unfortunately, this will lead to people getting fired. This will lead to, the IPs and the consumer faith being eroded away. So, again, what does the consumer do? Well, you got to put your money towards the things you want to buy or towards the things you want. And, I mean, that's really how you fight this, right? You don't fight it being mad or flipping the fuck out. You fight it by being like, okay, I identify as non-binary. I will not buy this. I'll put my money towards, I don't know, Eastern entertainment, since Western entertainment doesn't seem to fucking care, right? Or indie games. That's how you fight this. You really just don't fight at all. You're like, well, I guess I'll just play other things.
Good games win, bad games fail. It's the greatest time to be alive. This is one of the reasons why I said before it's the best time to be a gamer, is because, well, our money, our voting is working. And there's been a ton of games that we've been able to vote on over the last few years, and it's worked. It's worked. I've had a lot of people ask me why I'm so passionate about these kind of topics, or why I'm so passionate about gaming. It's just video games, dude. Calm down. I think in a lot of ways the reason why is because I view gaming as one of the last vestiges of an industry in which we can actually have any change happen. We can actually influence that industry. We can protect ourselves. We can protect our favorite hobby because of how young it is. It still is very young. It's not very set in its ways yet. While, yeah, there's a lot of investor money and things like that that are out there, this industry is a little bit more controlled because of, well, how the free market works. If we buy your game, you do well. If we don't buy your game, things aren't going to work out too well. And right now, it's not working out very well for a few companies, Ubisoft being one of them. The message will always be the same for me, and it's just that I genuinely do want more people to be involved in games. I want people to feel like they belong, and like I said earlier in the video, this isn't about hate. This isn't about trying to get people not in video games. This is about making sure that people are represented properly And this is making sure that people aren't having their identities commoditized simply for the fact that these companies want to try to make more money off of you. And then on top of that, how often we see these companies and their two-faced tactics trying to talk about how they care about you, how they want to represent you, but the minute that they go to sell their game in China, Russia, or Saudi Arabia, all of a sudden, well, they forgot about you. Oh, I'm sorry, we left you behind.
Yeah, they left you in America, because again, try selling an LGBT game in China and see how fast they slap that shit the fuck down. You know, it's like, and people understand this, right? Like, people aren't 5, but for some reason, and this is the thing with Americans, the more you grow, the less you know. It's like, once people, you know, are mad, once, you know, they have demons and they have daddy issues and they surround themselves with people that have the same fucking things, it's like, the critical thinking goes out the fucking window, right? When you're surrounded, again, by people who look like you, think like you, act like you, for some reason you stop thinking and start just conforming, right? And you see this with people, and I hate this Men in Black's fucking saying, but it's true. It's like, a person is smart, people are stupid, right? This is where we're at. You have people that, again, they probably genuinely believe they're doing the right thing, but they're doing it the wrong way. Like, they're influencing games, they're changing IPs and games to skew and to fight some sort of ideological battle, and it's coming at the detriment of the consumer, right? And the consumer's like, what the fuck is this? Why am I playing this? And then the same people will attack you for being like, what the fuck? And it's like, that's where the vitriol comes. It's complete fucking strangers trying to moralize to other complete fucking strangers, right? Which has never worked, right? I ain't never seen a situation where one stranger morally imposes on another, and stranger 2 is like, oh, well, I guess you're fucking right. Fuck me, man. I mean, fuck. Like, that just never works. And if it would work, we wouldn't be in this situation, right? If it did. But, you know, usually adults just don't care to have their opinion changed by some random bloke, right? And again, what people say holds very little water with me. I take actions. Again, actions speak louder, right? And we see the actions of DEI being imposed, and the actions are coming at my detriment. So I will fight DEI because it doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for gamers. It doesn't work for gaming as an art or an entertainment. Hell, it doesn't even work for entertainment as a whole, but people want to push it to fight some ideological battle that just doesn't exist in the minds of people and in fiction, right? This is why most fantasy races in Dragon Age or Veilguard just act like human, because they remove the idea of race and of how, you know, the elves act like elves, the dwarfs act like dwarfs. No, they're just humans cosplaying as these things, and this strips away fantasy. It dumbs it down to a small fringe ideological group of people that for some reason want this because they treat fiction like it's reality, right?
Got a Home Alone episode, or I guess that was actually a movie. Do they have a TV show? I don't know. Anyway, we have a lot of games to vote on next year. I've been looking at the list of games that we have, and it's staggering. I thought that this year was stacked. Next year, it looks insane now. With some of the more recent reveals that we've seen, as well as just, you know, the big titles that we already knew were coming next year, it's going to be a crazy year. I'm going to be struggling to find the time. You're going to be struggling to find the time, so make sure you're picking wisely. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys take the root message to heart and understand that it's not necessarily DEI is the devil. It's just that the way that it's being implemented, how it's being abused, and how it's being corrupted is the issue.
Yeah, it's not, diversity like at a base, because again, that just happens. Like when things become popular, they will just naturally become diverse. It's treating it like a game itself in companies, treating the art like this malleable clay to form however way you want and at the detriment of the consumer. That's what people have a problem with.
So, push back against those and the things that actually matter. That's the real point of this discussion. Instead of putting all of our focus on a single game developer or a journalist or something like that, well, I think it's really important to bring up the things that they discuss and to criticize those things. I think that in a lot of cases, what we need to be doing is putting most of our focus on the places that actually matters. That's these government programs, because that's where the root of all these issues really is. Yep. So, anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, make sure to share this with your friends, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It'd be kind of crazy if you haven't subscribed already. I guess I'm already at 200,000 or almost at 200,000. I was planning on making a video about 100,000 subs, and well, that didn't happen. So I guess I'll have to figure something out soon. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe. Follow me on Twitch if you guys want to catch me live, and I'll check you later. Peace.
Yeah, and again, like the DEI, again, what's happening is there are no new IPs coming out, and that's the problem. It's just yet another old IP, yet another game made into a movie, or yet another Assassin's Creed, right? Again, because the DEI doesn't create. These initiatives don't create. They just infect, and they fester, and eventually they die, but that's it when the consumer says, no. Nah, bro, DEI and SB are the best things that happen to gaming. Now it's easier than ever to sort trash from diamonds. I mean, you're correct, but again, we shouldn't be at this level, right? Like, things should just be objectively better, but they're not. This is about being sick and tired of watching companies commoditize people's identities and then go and use them as a shield for bad product. The most concise and well-worded argument amidst all the noise was so well said. Yeah, I mean, and I struggle to really get my points across, and I try not to repeat myself, but, he does a perfectly fucking good job. As a black guy, we never asked for this. We just wanted authentic and original characters, not half-ass race swaps or shoot-in Killmonger haircut characters to check boxes and try to get brownie points. Plus, it just makes people hate us even more and increase the racism towards us. It does more damage than good. I mean, I don't agree with this because, again, it's fiction. What most people see in fiction, but it's difficult. Like, again, you can have a game set in Africa and people might just assume DEI, but sometimes you just gotta let the story speak for itself. The problem is the story's not. Like, the story is part of the identity of the group that makes the game, that are in lower management, the middle management that tells the devs how to make the story, how to create the art. Right? That's the problem, right? And again, most African Americans, like, they have some of the best, like, anime breakdown channels, right? And again, anime is a Japanese entertainment. I saw a short of girls playing Space Marine 2, and she's like, is this what masculinity in games is like? We need more of it. It's fucking awesome. Says it already. Yes. I mean, yes. CRS is when they remove Aunt Jemima from the package to solve racism, but leaves the high fructose corn syrup and hex methophosphate in the actual food. Yeah, the food itself is still contributing to heart disease, but they remove Aunt Jemima. Ain't game for everyone is a game for no one. Arrowhead Game Studios. Yeah, other game studios are pointing this shit the fuck out. The only DEI statement anyone ever needs to hear to happen 6 years ago. I have a dream that someday my grandchild is judged by the color of the skin, not the content of their character. It's not that hard. Well, I mean, again, the ideology, it wouldn't exist if what my boy said was to come to fruition. Because, again, victimization is an industry, you know, and it has lots of money in it. It called Nazi for saying Concord looks dumb was my limit. Seriously, those people have worn that word down to a nub. Yeah, again, these ideological terms just do not mean what you think they mean anymore. Which is why when I hear I'm just like, yes, sure, whatever, fucking idiot. Diversity has always been in games, pop culture, and media. Diversity of ideas, culture, gender, ideology, nationalities working on the game, etc. There was artistic freedom too, but it started becoming corrosive the moment people pretend like none of this exists, therefore overcompensating using DEI. I have no issue with DEI as a concept. I have a serious issue with the practice being prioritized over quality, innovation, and passion. Absolutely. And this is what everybody sees, right? Even the people that push DEI sees this. They just don't care because they don't care for games. They don't care for you. They only care for the initiative and the, I guess, but suck wealth from companies. But yeah, again, I'm gonna stick to my win condition of not buying these games and just putting my money toward. Forgive Me Father 2 is out, which Forgive Me Father 1. Look, I'm going to talk about the things I like, because I talk about a lot of things I don't like. I'm going to talk about a fucking thing I like. Forgive Me Father 1 was probably one of the best third-person Doom-like shooters I've ever played, right? And I played a lot. I'd say in the past 5 years, 6 years. Yeah. So Forgive Me Father's 2 is out, and I hope it shares that energy, right? I don't care. I want it to be any more or any less. Or maybe being a little bit more is fine. But I want it to share that energy, right? But anyway, that's all I gotta say about this. Peace.